Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Fulton Community Focus. I'm Darin Wernig. Today we thought we would take a break from discussing the regular city events and talk a little bit about the nation's pastime. And what better person to talk about baseball here in Fulton than former Major League Baseball player Charlie James. Charlie, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. It's a privilege to be here.
Now, the reason we brought you in is this is a special year, the 50th anniversary of the 1964 World Series championship team. Does it seem like it's been that long?
I wonder many times where the 50 years went. That's for sure.
The Cardinals honored you guys for the 50th anniversary. Talk a little bit about what they did for you guys and what it was like to see some of those former teammates, some that you probably haven't seen in a long time.
Sure. It was really a wonderful affair. The ceremony was held on Memorial Day, and they had a 3:15 game against the New York Yankees scheduled, who incidentally were the team that we beat in the 1964 World Series. So that worked out pretty nice. But the night before, we all checked into the hotel in the afternoon, and they had a real nice team dinner with wives and families and things at Cardinal Nation, which is the new facility that they just finished building downtown behind the ballpark there. It was fun to see everybody. Some of the fellas like Gibson and McCarver and Brock, some of the big names, I had seen them off and on throughout the year, but some of the fellas like Dick Grote, our shortstop, and Julian Javier, our second baseman, during the regular season, I hadn't seen for years. They were not able to make it to the other previous functions where I had seen some of the other players. But one of the real fun things was the opportunity to see and visit with Julian Javier, because he lives in the Dominican Republic, which makes it kind of hard for him to get back. And the neat thing about seeing him was that he was my roommate for 1 year. And Julian, of course, back then couldn't speak English, and I couldn't speak Spanish, so we had to get along by sign language. And that worked out. We had an interesting year together as roommates, but we got through it.
Were you able to learn a little Spanish along the way?
No, I'm afraid not. Just a couple little sayings, and that was about it.
And I heard too, they brought you out in the convertibles, like what they do with the players on opening day. What was that like?
That was fun. On Memorial Day, they gave us a shirt, actually this shirt here that's hanging, and we wore those shirts, and I had a cap. Most of the guys didn't have a cap, so I wore my cap and the shirt, and everybody had an individual Mustang convertible to ride in, and of course the Mustang car was in its 50th year of existence as well, because the first one was built in 1964. So that was kind of neat. And we got in and went around the outfield dirt area, kind of like they do on opening day. And then when you come back around by home plate, you get out there, and then they introduce you, and we lined up on the first base line. Very similar to opening day. I was amazed at the number of people that were there ahead of the game. I guess it was like 45 minutes ahead of the game when we started the program. And there was a huge, huge crowd. So that was really thrilling to know that there were that many fans that still cared about the 64 Cardinals.
Well, let's go back to the 1964 season, spring training in St. Petersburg. What did you guys as players think that the team could do going into the season?
Well, we thought we'd have a good shot at winning the pennant. You see, back in those days, they didn't have the same playoff system that they have today, because they had 8 teams in the National League and 8 teams in the American League, and whoever came in first place would go to the World Series. so we had to win the pennant to have a chance at the World Series. But anyway, while in spring training, we remembered the previous year, which was 1963, and we almost won the pennant in 1963. We lost out in a 3-game loss to the Dodgers, like about the last week or 10 days of the season. They came to St. Louis, and we couldn't quite beat them. If we'd have beat them 2 out of 3, we'd have had a really good chance. But that kind of put us out about 5 or 6 games out of the first place position. So we lost out, and the Dodgers won that year. So going into the 64 season, we thought we had a good chance to win it all in spring training, and we did pretty good during the early season. There were many close games, but we were playing about 500 ball, and about June or so, I think it was, why the management decided to make a trade, and they traded for Brock, and Brock came to St. Louis at that time. That kind of cut down on my playing days for the rest of the season, although I pinch hit and filled in here and there and started a game or two. But that really curtailed my playing season. The first part of the year, though, I had several really exciting games to help the team win, and every game that you win is very important throughout the season, because at the end of the season, we only won the pennant by 1 game. So every game that you win is very important. One game that I do remember playing in, I think it was April, May, I was fortunate enough to hit a 3-run home run off of Sandy Koufax that gave us the win in that particular ball game. So that was kind of fun.
Now, you mentioned the Brock trade, June 15th, 1964. Cardinals sent Ernie Broglio, who was a starting pitcher, to the Cubs for Lou Brock. Other players were involved, but those were the key guys.
Yeah.
And Brock, when he was playing with Chicago during that year, he wasn't really having a spectacular season. So when you found out about the trade, did you know that meant trouble for your playing time, or that you wouldn't be playing as much? Or?
Not really. I thought I'd still have a pretty good chance to play, but Brock, when he came over, got really hot. He was not in Chicago, he was not a very good outfielder to begin with. He always had natural speed, which was a really plus for him. And he wasn't really hitting much in Chicago. But when he got to St. Louis, for some reason he just got real relaxed and started hitting and running and playing the outfield at a pretty decent pace. So it definitely cut into my time.
But did manager Johnny Keane, discuss, at the time of the trade of, well, this doesn't really reflect anything on you, you still have a chance to play, or was there any conversations along those lines? Or?
I don't remember that exactly, although he was pretty good about talking to you about your expected participation with the team. So he probably said some things, but maybe not quite in that vein,
Down the stretch of the season, late August, you guys are 11 games back. Bing Devine, who was the team's general manager, was fired. There were reports of Leo DeRocher being hired as the manager for the next season, so Johnny Keane was on his way out, stuff like that. What was the atmosphere like on the club late August to where you guys even could think about still being in contention?
Yeah, that's a good point. We were, of course, late August, we were like about 11 games out, and then we were able to cut that down to like 6.5 with only about 12 games to go. But we knew what was going on there, and that Bing had been fired. But Bing Devine, we all remembered that he was the guy that put that team together. So we were very determined at that point to go after some victories and try to win the pennant. We still wanted very much to get into the World Series, if not in his behalf, and for our own behalf. And of course, the rumors were flying about DeRocher and Johnny Keane going at the end of the season. But it didn't actually turn out that way. But we wanted to play as hard as we could for Johnny Keene's sake as well. So it was definitely a factor, I think, and helped us to win more ball games.
Was there any motivation or anything that was said by the players or coaches, to try and keep you guys playing hard and hoping that, well, hey, maybe the Phillies and the Reds will fall apart and allow you guys to get in there?
No, but we individually were, following the Reds and the Phillies. So we just figured if we could keep winning and the other teams kept losing, we'd have a good shot at it. And that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, and on the last day of the season, playing against the Mets, all you guys ultimately had to do was win a game to win the National League pennant. And what was that like to actually win that last game and go to the World Series?
It was quite a thing. But you have to remember that we had a 3-game set with the Mets, and all we had to do was win 1 or 2 of the games. And the first game we lost like 2-1. It was a very, very well pitched ball game. And I think Jackson was the pitcher's name with the Mets that beat us. And then the second game, we thought sure we'd win that one, and we ended up in kind of a high run scoring game and ended up losing it, as it turned out. So there we were with losing the first 2 games, and we should have won probably both of those games. And we went into the last day of the season with a potential 3-way tie for first place. And as fate would have it, the Phillies and the Reds lost their game, and we won our game on the last day of the season. So it was a very joyous occasion.
But I guess that joy, didn't last that long, as you guys had to face the Bronx Bombers, the New York Yankees in the World Series. They had great players like Mickey Mantle, Elston Howard, Whitey Ford, Cleve Boyer.
They had been winning at least every other year. They've been winning the World Series, it seemed like. But we really didn't have any fear of the Yankees. I think when we went into the World Series, before the series started, we felt like we had as good a chance to win it as the Yankees did. So our attitudes were very good. We had very good pitching with Bob Gibson and Ray Washburn and Ray Sadecki. Ray Sadecki actually won 20 games that year. And he won more games than Gibson won, and a lot of people have forgotten about that. And then we also had Kurt Simmons, who was our other starter, and we traded for him a couple of years earlier and received him from the Phillies. So we had good pitching. We knew we'd have a good shot at the World Series. But the big names, were there, and we knew we were going to have our hands full for sure. And those guys did perform pretty well in that series, being the series ended up 7 games.
What was it like going into Yankee Stadium, the house that Ruth built for the first time?
Yeah, that was quite a thrill. And most of us had not been to Yankee Stadium. So it was a little intimidating in Yankee Stadium. But once you got into batting practice and infield and so on, and got a chance to get out and see some of the statues out in the center field area, why, you just kind of blended in with it and felt like you could play there,
Your personal role in the World Series wasn't that much. You pinched hit a few times.
Right.
Did you wish that, you would have had a chance to contribute a little more? Or?
Oh, sure. Everybody wishes they could have started one of the games and played in the World Series from a fielding standpoint as well as hitting. But it was just fun to get up there and bat against some of the pitchers. They had Alvin Jackson one year, and Stottlemyre, and Al Downing, and Whitey Ford, and some of those guys that played, and I batted against some of those. So that was kind of thrilling to be able to do that.
And of course, the World Series went the full 7 games. The final game in St. Louis at Busch Stadium, Sportsman's Park. You guys won that game. What was it like winning on the home field and in your hometown?
Oh, that was just unbelievable. It was just a wonderful thing, and we were so elated that Augie Busch, the owner at that time, had set up a dinner just in case we won won the world championship at Stan and Biggie's restaurant. And I need to tell you a little bit about an incident that happened after the game. After we had won the game and got dressed and went to Stan and Biggie's restaurant to have dinner, while we were all sitting there with wives and whatnot, and we noticed that one of our key players was missing from the dinner, and we couldn't figure out what the heck had happened. Well, this particular player had made a commitment in the middle of the year when we were many, many games behind. He had made a commitment that night to speak at the First Christian Church Father-Son banquet in Webster Groves. So that player kept his commitment. Instead of going to the dinner, he kept his commitment and later on strolled into the dinner after he had given his talk.
And what was that person's name?
That player was all-star first baseman for us that year.
Bill White.
And his name was Bill White. He's quite a guy. I'll tell you, that was really impressive that he would do that and still participate in the celebration.
Nowadays, when a team wins, there's these big parades in downtown St. Louis. Did you guys have a celebratory parade too?
There
and what was that like?
That was great. That was great. They rode each of the players around in these pickup trucks, and you got to bring your family along with you, and it was really a wonderful thing.
Let's go back to the start of basically your baseball career. You know, if you've ever played baseball, no matter where you're at, you know, at some point in time you dream about, hey, what would it be like to play in the major leagues? When you were growing up playing, whether it was high school into college, was there one moment where you thought, well, you know, it's just not a dream, I could possibly be a Major League Baseball player?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, I can remember my counselor in high school would ask me almost every year, well, what would you like to do? What would you like to do after your college days when you're working? What profession would you like to go into? And I said, I want to be a professional baseball player. She said, oh, okay. She didn't believe it. I was going to do that. As it turned out, I did. But I think once I got into college and after high school, there's a time when in the summer where you have a chance to play in American Legion baseball. And I think the American Legion baseball program really kind of made me feel like I could do it at the professional level, because we had a pretty good American Legion baseball team, Maplewood Post 103 in the St. Louis area, and we won all of our tournaments and whatnot until we got to the Nationals, and we ended up finishing like third in the nation. So all the scouts and whatnot come to all of these American Legion games when you get into the tournaments, because they want to see what you've got, you know. So at that time, I kind of felt like I had a good chance to make it.
And do you remember the first time maybe a scout, whether it was from the Cardinals or another team, you know, came up to you and started talking and showed that they're interested in you?
There was a scout by the name of Joe Monahan with the Cardinals that I would see at some of the games. And back in those days, it was a different procedure. They don't have the draft set up like they do now. You basically just told the scout if you were interested in playing that this was the time. And a lot of the scouts knew that some of the players wanted to go on to college first. And I told them that if I did sign, I did want to have the opportunity to finish my college work. So that's how it worked out.
Go back to when you first got that notification that you were being called up to the St. Louis Cardinals and what that was like.
Yeah. Darin, I think I'll even go back a little farther than that, because to explain why it only took me 3 years to get there. I had a very good break. When I first signed my contract, the Cardinals took me to their spring training operation in St. Petersburg at that time. And I didn't stay there long because they just wanted to take a look at you, so I was there maybe a couple weeks early spring training. And then they start assigning you to different teams to finish your spring training. Well, they assigned me to the Houston Buffaloes. This was before Houston was a big league city. And I had a very good manager there that really was kind of instrumental in getting me through the minor leagues fast. So he normally, if you're just coming on board in the minor league system, they put you at a lower classification, you know, and you work your way up. This particular manager liked the way I hit, the way I was hustling and so on, and he kept me on the Houston Buffaloes team, which was a double-A, and then of course you go to triple-A and then the majors. So I was able to jump most of the minor league work, and that's how I was able to make it to the majors in 3 years. And then the second year I played in Rochester, and had a good year as well. I had a good year in the Texas League. But then the third year, I got off to a little bumpy start in Rochester, and they assigned me to Charleston, West Virginia in the American Association, a different league. But it was AAA also. And that's when I was called up to St. Louis. And it was quite a thrill. I remember when we were living in Charleston, my wife and I had rented a house, and we heard that they wanted me to make the move, and they said, get here as soon as you can. So I called my wife and said, you got to start packing up, we're going to St. Louis. And she said, yay! Well, she was happy. So by the time I think we were in another city, maybe it was Oklahoma City, I can't remember exactly, playing a road game. And by the time I flew back into Charleston and got off the airplane, she'd already packed the car, closed the house, paid all the utilities, and we were off driving to St. Louis. He was ready to go.
Do you still remember your first at bat? Were you nervous or were you ready for it? Or?
Yes, I was nervous. I think the first at bat was against Milwaukee when they were in Milwaukee, and the Braves were still in Milwaukee, I should say. And the pitcher was Joey J. And when I came up to the plate, I think they had about 30,000 people, but that was the most people I'd ever played in front of in my career. So I was nervous, but once I got a couple swings in, I felt pretty relaxed and ended up popping the ball up. But I remember my first hit later on. It was another game, a couple games down the road. We were playing Philadelphia, and it was against a pitcher by the name of Dallas Green.
Who went on to manage the Phillies,
Yeah,
I guess the same Dallas Green.
And he was a general manager for a couple of years, too. And that was exciting. And our trainer, who at that time was Bob Bowman, he would take the ball that you got your first hit, and he would fix it up real nice. He'd paint it with all the different stats from the game and show where your hit was and who it was against and what the final score was and so on. So that was kind of thrilling.
Do you still have that baseball?
I still have it, yeah.
Well, that brings up another question. You know, some players do, some players don't, but did you try to keep certain items from your baseball career, or were you aware of that? Well, you know, this would be a nice thing to hold on to, whether it's a game jersey you had or certain baseballs from certain games, or...
Sure. Usually I tried to get completely autographed ball from each one of the teams that I played with. That's kind of nice to have. And then most of the sports writers have photographs and things that of some action shots where you've either struck out or hit the ball really well or made a good play in the field or whatever. So I keep a lot of that. I kept a lot of that stuff, you bet. And then we also, after we won the World Series in '64, they gave us a very nice, Louisville Slugger Company gave us a very nice black bat with gold signatures on it. A lot of the players had signed a bat contract with Hilrich and Bradsby on the Louisville Slugger, and they all had their names inked in, and so they had it was already made up, signed, and delivered. So that was a real nice item to have too.
Oh, I bet. In your major league career, you had an opportunity to play with a lot of great players and also some pretty great characters too.
You bet.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to mention a name of a teammate of yours, and I want you to kind of tell me the first thing that comes into your mind when I mention them.
Okay.
First off, Bob Gibson.
Gibson. Tough competitor.
Bob Euchre.
Team clown.
Mike Shannon.
Moon Man.
Enough said. Kurt Flood.
Great center fielder.
Ken Boyer.
I used to call him the RBI man. He could drive in more runs than anybody.
Tim McCarver.
Probably the best catcher at that time that I can remember.
Now, he wasn't on the 64 team, but I got to mention this name, Stan Musial.
Stan Musial. Greatest Cardinal.
And,
Stan was on the team in 63, though, when we almost won it.
and last but not least, Charlie James.
Hey! A very thankful person that he had the opportunity to play in the major leagues.
Very good. Now, for those who don't know, besides everything you've done on the baseball field, nowadays you're also taking part in city government in a way as you're a member of the City of Fulton's utility board.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with being involved in public service like this, and what made you want to be involved?
Well, I had been involved in several different community activities, but as far as the utility board went, Robert Craighead, during his term as mayor, invited me to be on the board, and I thought, well, that would be a pretty good thing to do, since I was an electrical engineer by schooling, and had been involved at Central Electric in building electrical equipment, so I knew a little bit about the electrical industry, which is a part of the utility board responsibility. So that's how I got involved when I started.
And what are some of the major issues that you guys are dealing with nowadays?
Oh, I'd say the smart meters are probably the biggest thing, getting all of the meters changed out across town in such a manner that we can have automated readings and so on from a distance, and that's a big factor. And of course, we do a lot of reviews of rate changes, whether or not the utility bill should, the electric part of it should go up or down, or the gas part of it should go up or down, and it has varied over the years. At different times, we've made some changes that have both benefited the city residents as well as increasing the price. Mm-hmm. So it involves pretty much day-to-day activities.
All right, Charlie. Well, hey, I greatly appreciate you stopping by City Hall and reminiscing about the good old days playing with the Cardinals. I know a lot of fans out there will enjoy listening to this and reliving all those memories. So thanks for joining us today, Charlie.
You bet. Glad to do it.
All right,
Enjoyed
former
it.
St. Louis Cardinals outfielder and currently member of the City of Fulton's Utility Board, Charlie James. That's another edition of Fulton Community Focus. We'll see you next time.